One evening, when the sun sank below the horizon, the main character made her way into the palace and greeted the prince. The guy chuckled and asked in bewilderment if she had gone crazy. Noting that it was a great honor, the girl noted that she was very glad that he was willing to listen to her, despite the fact that she scared him. Not understanding what could have brought a sane aristocrat here, the prince reported that he almost mistook her for a rat and almost shot her. The heroine only remained silent when he noted that if he had not seen her from afar at the imperial ball, everything could have ended very badly. He didn't even know how to react when, coming closer, the girl turned to him with a request to propose to her. This morning, sitting at the doctor's office, the girl learned that she has no more than a year left, since at the moment there is no known method of treatment. The doctor told her that they could not pinpoint the root of the illness, but her senses were shutting down one by one. When he asked her if she had noticed anything strange, she said that she had always been rather indifferent to her feelings. The girl said that she understood this perfectly well and that she should go on her way, when the man clarified that this was not something that could be simply brushed aside. The doctor shouted that she should take at least some medicine, but she only reminded him of his words that there was no cure. I wrote something on a piece of paper, and the man clarified that I shouldn't sit idle. Realizing that she had already tried all these herbs, the girl only reported that in that case, everything should be fine. A little later, lost in her thoughts, the heroine could not understand how to convey that the medicines she makes are stronger than these, but even they do not help her. She understood that if she had known that everything would turn out this way, she would have started acting much earlier. The Duchy of Cassian is a duchy that, even after they had worked their way up to the title of ducal family through dirty tricks, could not stop digging deeper and deeper. There were many rumors about Cassian's second daughter, that she was the one who created many scandals where she lost her temper. Although the wild, vicious girl, the beloved daughter of Duke Cassian, did not appear at social events, she was still always at the center of gossip. Looking at them, they said that dirty blood could not be washed away, and there were not a single good rumors about them that were not true. Everyone was surprised when, at the very moment when they were being discussed at one of the social events, Duke Zekroyson and his eldest son Lucas appeared in the hall. Behind them appeared the eldest and youngest daughters of the Cassian family, Lillian Cassian and Efua Cassian. Standing in the crowd, the prince suddenly cast his gaze on Duke Cassian's second daughter, Rihanna Cassian. Arriving back at the palace, Rihanna immediately rushed out of the carriage, thinking that this was the only place where she could truly breathe. When the maid who met her asked if she should have a bath prepared, she asked that it be done a little later. By pulling the right book, the heroine made it so that a secret room opened, where her laboratory was. Sitting down at the chair, she sighed heavily, thinking that now she could finally breathe again. Glancing at the photograph on the shelf, she noted that everything had been much better before. She supposed that things might have been better if the Duke had not found out that she was studying medicine and forced her to create poisons. With the thought that you reap what you sow, the girl realized that she had neither choice nor power. Realizing that she had to live for her mother, she decided to take another dose of the stimulant just in case. Rihanna knew that even though the doctor said there was no cure, it didn't mean nothing could be done. The girl decided for herself that she needed to work hard to make everything work out. After looking into the book and seeing the plant she needed, she realized that the real problem was that it was located inside the imperial palace. Aperium is a flower that the emperor liked, and he brought it to the capital of the empire from the kingdom of Yalon. She knew there were rumors that he was imprisoned in the imperial palace, accessible only to the imperial family. With the thought that her plan for revenge was almost complete, she reassured herself that everything was fine, and it was just a small delay. Rihanna had heard earlier that the crown prince kept only a couple of guards near his chambers, and so she brought the sleeping potion with her, realizing that it might come in handy. When the maid asked where she was going, the heroine said that she was going to the palace and asked not to worry. The girl had heard earlier that His Highness was a very curious man, and she could only hope that he would be interested in her situation. Returning to the present time, the prince, looking at her with bewilderment, asked if she meant a proposal of marriage. Rihanna revealed she was more serious than ever when the guy pointed out that she seemed to enjoy joking around when her life was on the line. Noting that he was speaking in all seriousness, the prince said that he was declining the offer. He fell silent when the girl clarified that it was all because she was from the Cassian house. Looking at his reaction, she understood that the rumors that were circulating around her also played a role in his eyes. Thinking that it was a very rare herb that was keeping the current emperor alive, she suddenly asked about what she would say about an unlimited supply of taro. Smirking at her attempt to bargain with him, the boy clarified that the imperial family was not short of money. Looking at him at that moment, Rihanna was quite surprised that even that wasn't enough for him. Again asking him to marry her for just a year, she said that she would give him everything she had. Thinking about it, the prince could not understand why she needed to go so far. Noting that she had probably already heard rumors about herself, the guy suggested that she wanted to use this marriage to silence everyone. He didn't know what to answer when, placing the paper on the table, Rihanna announced that she would bring the Cassian house straight into his hands. Pointing to the paper, she said that this was all she had managed to collect about the Duke, and that it was evidence of his venality. Taking the paper in his hands, the prince began to study it carefully. He couldn't understand the reason, so he asked again why he would go so far for their marriage. Noting that he would understand everything when he read it, Rihanna said that she only wanted to avenge her mother. When asked why she should get married right away, she said that nothing binds two people together more strongly than marriage. Rihanna clarified that no matter what they do from now on, no one will doubt it if they were husband and wife. After thinking for a moment, the prince realized that her words were true, because House Cassian was a worthy opponent. Putting the papers on the table, he noted with a grin that he would never have thought that his opinion could be changed so easily. Asking the young lady to sit down, he informed her that they had a long night ahead of them. The very next day, everyone was talking about the crown prince proposing to the duke's daughter Cassian, despite the fact that their families were on terrible terms. Looking at the newspaper headline that the Villainess had bewitched the crown prince, Rihanna was quite surprised at how they could make up such a story. She knew that from a political point of view, this was not so bad, when suddenly the maid asked her if she was sure that she did not want to invite anyone. Thinking that she was referring to the maids who served her at the estate, the heroine noted that they had families. She clarified that if these maids move to the palace, they will not be able to see their loved ones often. Noting that they all said they would prefer to follow her, the maid asked what would happen if she became lonely in the palace. She just remained silent when Rihanna, with a grin, announced that she was no longer a child. Zenaida understood perfectly well that even if she said so, everyone still knew how soft-hearted their mistress was. She also knew that Duke Cassian had made it look like she was pretending and deceiving everyone. When Rihanna pointed out that it would be difficult for commoners to serve in the palace, the maid noted that it would not be easy for the mistress either. With complete confidence, the heroine said that everything would be fine as long as Zenaida was next to her. Noting that it really meant a lot to her, the woman said with a smile that she was very grateful to her mistress. At that very moment, they were informed that they had arrived. As Evelyn stepped off the carriage in her white wedding dress, she saw all the servants greet her. Everyone immediately began to whisper that the Cassian Empire was cursed, and to mention the many rumors that circulated around this land. Rihanna couldn't believe that they were all waiting for her, the so-called villain, and considered it another big day. Seeing the crown prince in front of her, who spoke tenderly to her, she immediately walked towards him. Extending his hand to her, he remarked that he hoped she had not missed the journey. Everyone was amazed when, with a loud cry that she was a witch, someone from the crowd poured some liquid on Rihanna's face. Seeing this, Zenaida, with horror on her face, immediately rushed to her mistress to wipe her face. At that moment, a girl appeared from the crowd and began to scream loudly about how she had lost everything because of Cassian. Looking at her, Rihanna didn't even know what to answer, and the prince immediately ordered the arrest of this woman. As the girl continued to scream about being the killer of House Cassian, the girl sighed heavily and assumed that this would never end. Noting that she was Hemian Martin, a noblewoman of this empire, the girl stated that she refused to ever acknowledge this corrupt Cassian aristocrat as the crown princess. While the maid was wiping the girl down, saying how good it was that she wasn't hurt, Rihanna, lost in thought, realized that she had heard that name somewhere before. She suddenly remembered that this was the daughter of a family that had recently gone bankrupt because of her father. It was a humble noble family that fell apart after it rebelled against the ducal family. The couple died in a staged accident, and their heir was found murdered under mysterious circumstances. However, there were rumors that their child had survived, and Rihanna researched them herself, and then fate simply handed her the answer. Having said that Cassian was a bloodthirsty monster, the girl called them a whole gang of murderers in noble suits. Despite this, Rihanna understood that this girl somehow didn't look good for someone who had survived. Telling him to see with his own eyes, she lifted the hem of her dress, saying that it was Cassian's blood that had done this to her. At that moment, the girl began to cough up blood, and the people looking at her were in complete shock and began to shout loudly to call a doctor. Rihanna immediately rushed to the girl, but the knights did not give her a pass, saying that it was dangerous. The prince watched in bewilderment as the heroine, saying that she was completely fine, asked to leave. While the knights continued to persuade her not to come closer, the girl continued to think that there were too many people around, and they could also get infected. She understood that she needed to be cured as soon as possible because she was losing consciousness. Just when Rihanna was thinking that the Duke was probably behind this, a maid came up and started asking if everything would be okay with the girl. She was very surprised when the lady suddenly noted that this could be of benefit to them. Rihanna noted that the Duke cares too much about his reputation, and now they could have serious problems. Asking what would happen if she intervened, she said with a smile that there was no better way to humiliate the Duke. When the maid asked what she meant, the girl said that she would explain everything later. Noting that they had to save her first, the heroine asked to bring her bag. When the prince suggested that they wait for the doctor first, Rihanna said that they would not have time to save her if they delayed. Looking at the girl with some distrust, the crown prince noted that this did not mean that she would actually be able to cure her. Asking him not to worry, Rihanna confidently said with a smile that she could handle it. Having said that she could help her, the girl ordered the guards to immediately clear the area. She immediately took out some medicine that was supposed to help neutralize some of the poison. Having used it on the girl, the heroine understood that for now they could use it to buy time to create an antidote. She was pleasantly surprised when she realized that it was working, but she knew that she couldn't leave it because the symptoms might return. At that moment, foam came out of the girl's mouth, and she herself began to twitch, which was not very good, because Rihanna would not have been able to administer the injection. She was quite surprised when the prince suddenly pressed the girl so that she would not twitch, and then asked if she was sure. Confidently agreeing, Rihanna clarified that she had done this 100 times already. When the prince asked if she knew the cause, she said it was Manhwa poisoning, and if they didn't find an antidote, it would spread to everyone. Assuming that a crude neutralizer had been used here, the girl realized that she needed immediate first aid. Blood immediately gushed from the punctured wound, but reacting calmly, Rihanna asked Zanid to give her medicine. When she administered the medicine, she breathed a sigh of relief, realizing that now they had a little time. Thinking that she now needed to prepare an antidote, she took pen and paper in her hands. Having handed this paper to Zanid, she asked her to collect all these ingredients, to which the maid immediately agreed. When the prince asked if anything else was needed, Rihanna said they were able to prevent the irreversible. She clarified that this is a temporary effect and they need to find an antidote as soon as possible. The prince was extremely surprised when, in response to his words about the necessary medicine being quite difficult to find, the girl said that everything was fine and she knew how to create it. A little later, Rihanna sat in the chambers of the imperial palace, sighing heavily. At that moment, a maid entered the room and, noting what a shame it was, informed the mistress that her new dresses had arrived. 4 hours ago, turning to the girl, the prince asked her to pay attention to the bloodstains on her dress. Looking at her dress, she realized that it was a little wrong to hold the ceremony like this. With the thought that she needed to prepare the antidote, and that in the meantime they would prepare her dress, she turned to Edward. With a bright smile on her face, she asked if it would be more romantic to have the ceremony against the backdrop of a beautiful sunset. Noting that this was a good idea, the prince said that he would handle the rest of the issues himself. When after receiving the dresses, Rihanna asked what was wrong with His Highness, the maid informed her that he was currently dealing with the nobles. Thinking that fortunately, once Hemion took the medicine, the critical danger had passed, she glanced at that very girl. She knew that because the wedding was postponed, the arrogant nobles began to voice their complaints. While Zanita helped her put on the dress, Rihanna was still pleasantly surprised that Edward seemed to be handling them well. At that moment, the prince himself knocked on the door and entered the room, and announced that they could no longer postpone the ceremony. When he asked if all the preparations were complete, the girl agreed and asked what the nobles were saying. Edward told the girl that, as expected, their heads were too full of discussions of gossip and today's incident. Noting that he too had a lot of questions, the prince said that they should now move on to the ceremony. Taking a look at Hemion lying behind her, Rihanna was worried that she would be attacked while they were gone. Asking her not to worry, the prince said that he would order his men to guard the place. thinking about what a relief it was, the girl extended her hand to the guy. She understood that in the Crown Prince's palace, especially after what had happened, it was unlikely that anyone would dare to make another scene. Thinking that once they stepped outside, all eyes would be on them, they headed towards the exit. Knowing that there were already romantic rumors going around and she needed to follow through, Rihanna smiled and suggested that they go. Already in the evening, Rihanna's thoughts were occupied with the fact that the wedding ceremony was finally over, and this was the first step. When the maid reported that the job was done, the girl looked at herself in the mirror and focused her attention on the aquamarine woven into her hair. She knew perfectly well that it was a jewel that her mother adored. Her mother always said that he reminded her of the color of her eyes and hair, although her hair has since turned gray. A little later, when she asked the maid about His Majesty, she learned that he had said that he needed to leave. Her thoughts that they should have stayed together were suddenly dispelled when someone called her name. Hearing this voice, she immediately understood who it was and immediately turned back. Before her stood her half-brother, the leading candidate to become the next Duke, Cassian. Just seeing him made Rihanna furious, because she knew very well that this man was involved in the death of her mother. Turning to the girl, the guy said with a grin that he should be called brother. When told that she didn't have time for him, Lucas informed her that it wouldn't work that way and that she'd better make time for him. He clarified that, after all, it was he who took upon himself the responsibility of attending his precious sister's wedding. Asking him if he had forgotten where he was, the girl clarified that he was in the imperial palace and that she was the crown princess from that day on. When her brother asked her where she had learned to be so impudent, the girl, smelling blood on him, told him that he should watch his language. Having pinned the girl against the wall, Lucas, with a frightening look, informed her that she knew perfectly well why he was here. He suddenly started talking about a certain woman when suddenly the crown prince appeared behind him. Turning to him, Edward asked what exactly he was doing now with his bride. Not understanding what he was allowing himself to do, he asked why he was behaving this way with his fiancée. Surprised, Lucas turned to His Highness and did not even know what to say in his own defense. Coming closer, the prince noted that he must be her brother, and also specified that he himself was jealous to the core. Edward informed her that for this very reason, he would be grateful if he would refrain from getting close to his fiancée in his presence. Asking him not to misunderstand, Lucas began to justify himself by saying that they were just talking. Looking at him with bewilderment, the prince asked since when people used their hands to talk. Noting that this is a common behavior among siblings, Lucas said it was a huge relief that his sister was so loved. Telling Lucas to watch his words, Edward clarified that she was no longer his sister, but the crown princess of the empire. Lucas immediately changed and said that it was extremely careless of him, and he hoped that His Highness would forgive him. Rihanna immediately breathed a sigh of relief, knowing that this was enough to make Lucas back off. She was quite surprised when Edward suddenly asked him about this carelessness. Looking at the bruise on the girl's shoulder, he said that a slip of the tongue was one thing, but their case could not be attributed to a mistake. When he announced that he would officially report this to Duke Cassian, Lucas wanted to start making excuses again. Without even giving him a chance to say anything, Edward suddenly asked if he wanted to continue the argument with the crown prince. Noting that no one dared to behave like that in his presence, the prince suggested that Duke Cassian was raising his sons poorly. Lucas didn't know what to answer when Edward suddenly asked if he wanted to arrange and end the trial right then and there. After bowing, he immediately offered his deepest apologies and announced that he would leave it at that. When the guy left, Edward immediately asked if she was okay, to which the girl immediately agreed. When he asked her why she was standing still, he almost called her a fool but immediately apologized. After that, Rihanna immediately told that she was just about to scream, and then he appeared. Noting that they were late, she asked the prince to go while she cleaned herself up. Arriving at the ladies' room nearby, Zenita immediately began to apologize because she had to hurry. Having said that everything was fine and that nothing could be done about it, the heroine asked if there was anything she could use to cover her shoulders. Having handed her the item, the maid asked if it would fit, to which the girl immediately agreed. When she asked if everything was okay with her hair, Zenita, adjusting some strands, said that everything was almost okay. Rihanna felt almost no pain, and Zenid didn't know about her condition, so she smiled and suggested that they hurry. She was very surprised when she left the room and saw Edward in front of her. When asked why he was still there, he said that it could not be ruled out that Lucas would appear again. Not understanding why she was looking at him like that, the guy clarified that it was a wedding banquet and they should go there together. Looking at the guy reaching out his hand to her, Rihanna was very surprised that he was now genuinely worried about her. After thinking for a moment, she smiled, because she finally understood why Edward was called a fair prince who could sympathize with the weak. A little later, everyone began to congratulate His Highness on his marriage. Raising his glasses with his wife, Edward smiled and thanked those who had honored them with their presence. Rihanna knew that she had no special tasks at the banquet other than greeting some nobles and accepting congratulations. Hearing all sorts of gossip about herself, Rihanna took it as expected, because she knew that the nobles would gossip about her. She was quite surprised when someone from the crowd suddenly remarked that her actions were impressive. The girl was quite embarrassed to hear that not all gossip was just insults. With the thought that she would prefer not to hear anything about herself, the girl was disappointed that the distance did not allow her to distance herself. At that moment, Edward, who appeared out of nowhere, suddenly noted that he was very surprised. Noting that the moment for explanation had come, he asked what had actually happened, but Rihanna did not know what to answer. At that moment, one of the aristocrats approached them and, apologizing for being late, congratulated them on their wedding. The prince was very surprised, because they had been having a conversation, while Reina, rushing to the count, began to thank him for his congratulations. While she was glad that these nobles had saved her, Rihanna knew that these explanations would have taken another half a day. Looking around, the girl suddenly realized that she did not see her father here. She understood perfectly well the reason for her sister and brother's refusal, but she did not understand what was going on, so she assumed that they were trying to cover up the incident with Hemi and Martin. However, she had nothing to worry about because she already had a trump card up her sleeve. Rihanna knew very well that Hemion Martin would soon become a very valuable person to her. Sometime later, when the wedding ceremony was over, Rihanna, lying in the bathtub, sighed with relief. When the maid asked if she would add rose petals, she said there was no need. When Zanita exclaimed that this was their first night, the girl still agreed, because she understood that nothing would happen anyway. Despite this, Rihanna knew that today had been a very eventful day for both of them, and she should enjoy such wonderful moments. A little later, she looked in bewilderment as the maids helped her get ready. The maid specified what exactly she would like, when the princess, realizing that she would definitely freeze in such an outfit, asked if there was anything warmer. At that very moment, it was announced that His Highness had arrived, and Rihanna was quite surprised because she was not yet fully dressed. Knocking on the door, he informed the girl that he was entering the room. She didn't know what to answer when, looking at the trembling girl, Edward asked what she was doing. The guy took off his cape and put it on the girl, saying that it looked like she was cold. Rihanna was very surprised and a blush appeared on her face, after which she thanked the guy. Noting that she probably wanted to know, Edward revealed that Hemion Martin was safe. Thinking that she was just about to ask about this, the heroine immediately thanked him. He informed her that she could do as she wished when Rihanna asked if she could bring Hemion to her tomorrow. The girl understood that even though she had given her the antidote, Hemion would still need to take some medication. Edward continued to silently look at the girl, who was still thinking about how serious Hemion's symptoms were. When the guy suddenly turned to her, she was surprised enough to apologize, saying that she was thinking for a bit. She didn't know what to answer when Edward suddenly asked her if she was going to bed. Sitting down on the bed, he called the girl to lie down with him. Rihanna, embarrassed, didn't know what to say when Edward clarified that she was going to bed. Walking over to the bed, she lay down next to Edward without saying a word. Looking at the ceiling with great bewilderment, she thought about how awkward it was to lie under the same blanket. She asked in surprise what was wrong when the prince, rising, suddenly turned to her. Looking at her shoulder, he noted that her bruise looked quite painful. Rihanna immediately covered herself with the blanket in great surprise when he suddenly placed his hand on hers. Noting that it wasn't that easy to notice, Edward asked if it was in much pain. Noticing the tense atmosphere, the girl said that she was completely fine, and wounds always look much worse when they heal. She said it was quite logical when Edward suddenly asked her how she knew so much about such things. After clarifying that he was talking about Biva, the guy noted that she immediately recognized that it was Biva poisoning. At the same time, he also noted that she prepared the antidote very quickly, although few in the Empire can do this. He clarified what she was talking about when Rihanna said that in the Empire it might be like that. She said that her mother was a princess of the Yalan kingdom and had studied medicine and pharmacology in depth. Rihanna reported that although it was said that the Yalan kingdom fell due to its weak national power, they had no equal in medicine. Noting that he had heard something similar before, Edward reported that there were several doctors from the Yalan kingdom in the imperial palace. Saying that it would be easier to explain then, Rihanna began to talk about how she grew up and learned a lot from her mother. Early in the morning, the maid began to wake up her mistress, saying that it was time for her to get up. Opening her sleepy eyes, Rihanna sighed heavily. She was very surprised and immediately jumped out of bed when she heard that it was almost noon. Noticing that the girl was not feeling well, Zenita asked if she needed to call a doctor, to which the girl replied that everything was fine. When Rihanna learned that His Highness had gone to his office, she realized that now was not the time to think about it. Asking Zenid to help her get ready, she said that after eating she was going to meet His Majesty. Sometime later, the girl and the maid were walking down the corridor when suddenly a guy appeared in front of them. Calling Her Highness, he informed her that by order of the Crown Prince, from that day on he had been appointed her personal attendant. With a bright smile on his face, the boy asked Her Majesty to call him Ares. She noted to herself what a braggart he turned out to be when the guy clarified that he was much more resilient than ordinary knights. When Rihanna asked him if he had just arrived, Ares said that he had not. Having learned that he had been waiting for her outside since the morning, the girl wondered where exactly he had just crawled out from. Unsure if he was hiding something, she assumed Edward had ordered him to follow her. She noted that this was not entirely surprising to herself, since she understood that he probably did not trust her yet. Ares happily agreed with Her Highness when, having accepted the situation, she informed him that she relied on him. While in the Empress's residence, the head maid informed Rihanna that Her Majesty the Empress was asking her to come inside. The girl was very surprised when she realized that this meant that they wanted to bring her to his chambers. Originally, the Emperor was supposed to reside in the Imperial Palace, but since the Empress was constantly looking after him, his residence was moved. When the head maid brought her into the room, Rihanna was quite surprised at how dark it was. Looking around, she saw that all the windows that should let in light were curtained. Seeing the Empress in front of her, Rihanna immediately bowed, expressing her respect. She knew very well that Empress Presaria Surtizan had once ruled the upper crust of society until the Emperor fell. When the Empress remarked that she had heard that there had been a great commotion during the wedding, the girl immediately apologized. When the woman asked if she had prepared the antidote, Rihanna agreed and said that her mother had once taught her how to do it. The girl was quite surprised when, turning to the Crown Princess, the Empress said that she would speak directly and threw the bag on the floor. Rihanna immediately apologized when Her Majesty informed her that she was disgusted by House Cassian and despised the rumors surrounding the Crown Princess. The girl was very surprised to hear from the Empress the words that, now that she had become part of the family, she would do everything to avoid treating her with disdain. Rihanna knew that House Cassian had been at odds with the Empress's family for a long time, and it seemed like they had a chance to mend fences. Having thanked Her Highness, the girl looked questioningly at the bag and asked what it was. Having announced that this was the seal of the Crown Empress, Her Majesty explained that it was now her duty to manage the Crown Prince's palace. She said that she had quite a lot of duties to do, when suddenly the head maid approached her with some medicine. Seeing her putting drops in her eyes, Rihanna apologized and asked if she was feeling unwell. Noting that this was an inevitable part of being human, the Empress said that as everyone gets older, it is only natural that illnesses appear here and there. Thinking about it, Rihanna guessed that she was around 40, based on previous rumors, and was very surprised that she was talking about aging so early. Her Majesty reported that caring for the patient made her feel as if her body was wearing out faster than her age would allow. Looking at her at that moment, Rihanna realized that there was no concentration in her gaze. Before taking the medicine, her gaze was clear, but after, she immediately changed, and as far as Rihanna knew, there was no medicine with such an effect. She realized that all this was too suspicious to ignore, because such an effect could be due to two reasons: a drug that was not suitable for her body or drug abuse. Turning to the Empress, the girl reported that it was winter now and the air was very dry, which is why the eyes might feel discomfort. Rihanna said she would like to recommend a tea that is good for eye health, if that's okay with you. Agreeing, the Empress noted that her eyes had been feeling this way for about a year, and drinking tea would not improve her condition. Rihanna, upon hearing this, immediately thought about it and realized that there was no need to ask about other symptoms. She could guess everything by glancing at the ingredients of the drug, so she decided to stop by the Imperial Medical Palace on her way back. Noting that Her Majesty had previously been in poor health, Rihanna said she was deeply concerned. The Empress said that everything was fine, while the heroine realized that she was already starting to get angry and needed to act more harshly. She immediately asked what the doctor was telling her and asked whether they should be punished. Having reported that, thanks to the medications prescribed by the head physician, the pain was gradually subsiding. The Empress said that it was simply old age. This made Rihanna think, because at such an age it is not the time to think about old age. At this point, the Empress said that she very much hoped that she would not have a reason to be angry with her in the future. Bowing, Rihanna agreed with her and said that she would do everything in her power. After leaving the room, she immediately asked the headmaid if there had been any complaints. The headmaid immediately informed that matters concerning Her Majesty's health were not within her competence. Noting that as the headmaid she should know about this, Rihanna asked what the Empress usually complained about. The headmaid said that this concerned Her Highness's personal life, and she could not disclose it. Not understanding whether she was being so cautious because of her background, the heroine wondered whether she should ask again. She said that she was interested in helping Her Majesty, so she would be grateful if she could tell her anything. Rihanna was very surprised when, after her words, she felt such a close gaze on her. Noting that this was the Empress's palace, the headmaid said that etiquette and rules were paramount here. Having said that all this was independent of her goals and desires, the girl asked to follow the rules. Rihanna clearly knew that this was said sarcastically, and although her tone was polite, she meant that in the Cassian house, rules and etiquette did not matter. She knew that Cassian had indeed received the title generations ago for military service and had built his power on wealth, which was not in keeping with tradition. The Cassians have roots in the slums, and despite being one of the most influential houses in the empire, they continue to operate in the shadows, keeping a low profile. Many people know about this, but since there is no evidence, everyone is silent, and that is why the headmaid is so careful. Turning to her, Rihanna asked the senior maid to say her name. Having learned that the girl's name was Blanche Kemmer, the heroine was surprised. Now she understood why she was so self-confident. She knew that the family of Count Kemmer was a house with a long history that had existed since the founding of the empire and had enormous influence within it. Rihanna realized that it was no surprise that she was acting this way, because this was not a house that Cassian could easily run into. Turning around, the girl said with a smile that she would take her answer to heart. Walking through the garden, Zenid asked the lady where else she should accompany her. After stating that she needed to go to the Royal Medical Garden, Rihanna noted that everything needed to be checked thoroughly. Thinking about the Kemmer family, she noted that the older something is, the more dust it collects. Rihanna was very interested in the question of how much dirt there was in that house. At the Royal Medical Center, everyone was rushing and preparing everything because they were not warned about the visit of the Crown Princess. At the moment when the chief was telling everyone to quickly prepare for the reception of Her Majesty, Rihanna came to them. The head doctor immediately exclaimed that he apologized for the disorderly appearance because they had not received any notification. After asking if she wanted to look around, he asked where she would like to start. After stating that this was not the case, Rihanna said that she was there to talk to him. Saying that she would appreciate it if he could spare some of his time, she suggested they have a cup of tea. In the reception room, the head doctor looked at Rihanna drinking tea in surprise and silence. After conducting a consultation, Rihanna learned that the head doctor had been working here for 20 years and had received the position of head doctor 3 years ago. She found it surprising that he had not received an internal promotion, so she assumed that he had been practicing medicine on the street and had been brought here. Noting that she could ask him questions, the head physician said that he would answer any of her questions honestly. Noticing that, unlike the headmaid Blanche, he was quite accommodating, Rihanna realized that there was not a minute to lose. The head physician's face immediately changed when she said that she would like to know about Her Majesty's illness and the medications she was taking. Looking at him, the girl noted for herself that for a moment his eyes seemed very strange. After asking whether she meant Her Highness the Empress, he asked why Her Highness was interested in this. Rihanna, remaining calm, revealed that she studied medicine before she got married. Hearing this, the head doctor immediately remembered the situation about how she prepared an antidote for the Bihua poison. She was very surprised when he reported that he was very impressed to learn of her feat. Looking at him, Rihanna clearly saw how he was changing the subject of the conversation and stalling for time. Seeing how he didn't even try to hide his reaction on his face, the girl realized that he was definitely underestimating her. Rihanna knew this was to be expected when the head doctor said they couldn't give out all the details so easily. Asked what he was saying about this, despite the fact that she could help, she clarified that she had the right to access medical records. After apologizing and asking permission to speak frankly, the man noted that it was very wonderful that she had studied medicine. When he started talking about how it would be better if specialists dealt with this, one of the employees ran into the room with a loud scream. Everyone watched in surprise as the worker began asking him to step outside for a minute. When asked what was happening, the employee said he was very sorry because it happened so suddenly. Having asked what could have happened that was so important, the head physician noted that he was currently having a serious conversation with Her Highness. When the girl said that everything was fine and he could go, the head doctor said that in that case he would step away for a while. Rihanna was very curious about what kind of urgent matter they had, so she decided to go and see. With the thought that if the issue was resolved quickly, she would ask him again about the Empress, the girl went out into the corridor. One of the employees, contacting the head doctor, reported that this night suddenly collapsed right in the corridor. Hearing this, the girl was very surprised, and looking ahead, she was convinced that the night they were talking about was Aries. An hour ago, feeling not very well, Aries could not understand what was wrong with him today. His stomach hurt really badly, and he knew he needed to go to the bathroom urgently, even though he had already been there 5 times. He was sent to investigate the case of Hemion Martin, and without rest he was immediately sent back here. Realizing that His Highness was a real tyrant, Aries realized that, as expected, he had simply overworked and not rested. He timidly reported that everything was fine when Rihanna turned to him and asked if he was okay. In a nightmarish state, he understood that as a knight he could not display such shame, so he could only endure it. Not understanding what this all meant, the head physician asked if this was not Her Highness's night. Saying that he was on fire, the man immediately ordered that a stretcher and a wet towel be brought. A little later, he reported that his breathing was very quiet, but despite the fact that he had a fever, his cheeks remained very cold. Seeing the blood, he cried out in horror, and supposing that he had severe pneumonia, ordered that everything necessary be brought. Looking at all this fuss, Rihanna understood that something was definitely wrong here. Something was bothering her, and she couldn't understand why Aries had fainted. She knew that he was not just an ordinary knight, and was experienced enough to serve under the imperial family, but his diagnosis was supposedly fatigue. While Rihanna recalled that he had looked quite energetic a few minutes ago, the head doctor asked for his mouth to be opened. Looking at his face, she also noticed that he seemed to be coughing up blood. She was very surprised, and turning her attention to his fingers, she saw that they had turned blue. Everyone was very surprised when she suddenly ran up to the head doctor, asking him to stop because she needed to check something. The head doctor asked in bewilderment what she was doing, since they had no time at all for this. He couldn't understand what she was talking about when, after asking why they were giving the medicine right away, Rihanna asked why they didn't check for other symptoms. Everyone was amazed when, with complete confidence, the girl said that it would be better for her to examine it herself. The head doctor tried to stop her in bewilderment when, asking him to move away, the princess said that she needed to examine him. Crouching down, she began to carefully examine the guy and focused her attention on his fingers. He didn't understand what she wanted from him when she turned to one of the employees and asked him to go get a candle. The employee was horrified when she shouted loudly and ordered him to quickly go get a candle. She took the candle in her hands, and the perplexed head physician asked why exactly she needed the candle. Ignoring his question, Rihanna collected her thoughts and brought the candle to the guy's face. Looking at the guy's hands, everyone was immediately horrified when they saw that his fingers were bleeding. Now everything became clear to the heroine, and she reported that he was poisoned. She said that they needed to do a blood test, so she asked for a syringe, and also said that first they needed to administer a dose of ether. When silence followed, she asked in confusion why they were frozen, since she had told them what she needed. When the head doctor approached her, he clarified that she could not use something as barbaric as a test that mixed blood with other substances. The origin of this test lies in Yalona, the homeland of Rihanna's mother, and she also inherited this medical peculiarity. Rihanna herself had personally performed this analysis countless times and knew exactly how important it was. However, in the Empire, blood is let by cutting the skin, and this action is considered rude and even barbaric. Despite this, she could not stand and do nothing, so she turned to Zenita for help. Telling her to quickly go to the palace, Rihanna asked to quickly bring a syringe from there. Zanita immediately went to the palace, and the employees, looking at each other in horror, whispered that there was a personal syringe in the palace. Having ordered to take some cetrium, the girl reported that neutralizing the poison and providing first aid was the top priority. At that moment, the head doctor, with horror on his face, began to shout that this was impossible. Having said that this was unthinkable, he continued to shout that it was impossible for a knight to be poisoned in the imperial palace. Listing the symptoms, Rihanna said that all of these are symptoms of a special poisoning that is common on the southern continent. She said the most telling thing was that he collapsed in front of the toilet, most likely because he was trying to get rid of the poison himself. Rihanna said that if her assumptions are correct, she can even name this poison. She clarified that this did not mean it did not exist when the head doctor said he had never heard of it. Noting that severe pneumonia can be accompanied by the same symptoms, he clarified that he himself must deal with such issues. Hearing this, the princess immediately demanded that he explain the bleeding from his fingers when she shone the light into his eyes. Not knowing what to answer, the head physician said that, nevertheless, they could not use Zytrium. Not understanding why he was so persistent in trying to stop her, Rihanna clarified that they had no minute to waste. The head doctor responded to this by immediately informing her that she must not be aware, but Zytrium becomes a poison if it is taken by a person without the necessary symptoms. Noting that it was a palace knight, he specified that he should be handled with more care. Seeing that he had started to convulse, Rihanna shouted loudly and ordered that the cetrium be brought to her quickly because there was no more time. Having said that he would not allow this to happen, the head physician began to talk about the fact that one should not jump to hasty conclusions. The girl was in complete shock when he suddenly asked if she was neglecting his authority. At that moment, Rihanna realized that this man was more concerned with power over the patient than he was with himself. The man looked at her with great surprise when she informed him that she was ordering him as the crown princess. She angrily ordered him to bring her that damn cetrium quickly. The employee reported that he understood everything when the head doctor, shaking with fear, ordered to follow the order of Her Highness. The head doctor immediately noted that this was an important matter because she must be ready to take full responsibility if the diagnosis was incorrect. When the girl asked what would happen if she was right, he stated with complete confidence that he was confident in his skills. Rihanna didn't understand where he got so much confidence from, since he had never even heard of a poison like this. When she said that she would publicly apologize to him if she was wrong, the head doctor clarified that it would be better if she apologized to the knight. He didn't quite understand what she was talking about when the girl, having said that they had agreed, asked about him. Rihanna asked with a smile how he would repay her for her insolence if it turned out that he was wrong. Suddenly, it dawned on the head physician, and he realized that he was now talking to Her Highness the Crown Princess. Bowing his head, he said that he would do whatever Her Majesty wished and would accept everything. With a smile on her face, Rihanna agreed and said that she would wait. In any case, considering the head doctor, who was coming on recommendation, and his skills seemed very suspicious. With the thought that she would have to deal with him separately later, she thanked Zenid for bringing the things. Taking out the flask, she disinfected the syringe needle and brought it to the knight's hand. Seeing this, the head doctor shouted in horror that it was impossible to inject just like that. Looking at the syringe with blood, Rihanna realized that it was not clean even at first glance. When she handed the syringe to one of the doctors, telling him to conduct an analysis, he asked in bewilderment what she was talking about. Looking at him, the girl could not believe that they had never done a blood test before. She was even more horrified when she realized that the Imperial Medical Center didn't even have basic equipment. At this point, one of the staff members reported that a doctor from the Kingdom of Yalan knew how to perform a general blood test. Thinking that the Kingdom of Yalan was her mother's homeland, she ordered him to do so. The maid immediately agreed when the mistress asked Zenid to keep an eye on them. Rihanna noted that it was great when one of the doctors reported that he had obtained Zytrium. He, although timidly, nevertheless agreed when the princess ordered him to crumble it well and add water. Seeing the knight's pupils dilated, she realized that they had wasted too much time, so she ordered some more incidents to be brought. When the herbs she requested were brought to her, Rihanna ordered them to be placed next to her. Collecting her thoughts, she realized that she needed to study the area the poison was targeting and the mechanism of action of the antidote. At the same time, one of the servicemen rushed into Edward's office and reported that he had an urgent report. When the prince asked what had happened, he reported that the knight who had been assigned to the crown princess had suddenly fainted and had not regained consciousness. Upon hearing this, the crown prince was very surprised. When he asked what had happened, the servant also told him that Her Majesty was now personally treating him. Lost in thought, Edward couldn't understand how Ares, one of the most steadfast knights, suddenly found himself in such a situation and why it was Rihanna who began to treat him. With the thought that he needed to see for himself, the prince ordered the carriage to be prepared. When the prince arrived at the Royal Medical Center a little later, everyone immediately greeted him. Noting that he had arrived just in time, the head physician began to talk about how Her Majesty wanted to personally carry out the therapy. Taking a look at Rihanna, Edward was only convinced that she did indeed have experience. And the more Edward looked at her, the more she surprised him. He had heard some rumors before that Lady Cassin knew how to make poison, but what she showed him was only saving a person's life. The head doctor turned to him with horror on his face and asked if he was going to stop her. After telling him to be quiet, Edward asked if he couldn't see that she was trying to concentrate. After injecting the knight's arm, Rihanna breathed a sigh of relief. She was very surprised to see Edward in front of her, who immediately asked what had happened here. Rihanna said that Sir Ares suddenly lost consciousness because he was poisoned, but she administered the antidote and he would soon return to normal. When the prince asked when he would wake up, the girl, noting that it was difficult to say, clarified that everything depended on the endurance of Ares himself. She said that if he was lucky, he might regain consciousness today, but if not, it would take up to a week. Noting that the antidote was already working, the girl asked the prince to pay attention to the color of Ares's face. The head doctor immediately started shouting that he would never be able to come to his senses in one day, no matter how good the antidote was. Not understanding how Ares could have been poisoned, Edward asked if she knew what kind of poison it was. He didn't quite understand what she was talking about when Rihanna said they could find out the results soon. She said that she had previously sent his blood for analysis, and there they would find out what kind of toxin poisoned him. When asked when the results would be ready, the girl said that she had ordered the results to be brought as soon as they found poison. At that moment, one of the doctors rushed towards them with a loud shout that the results were ready. To sum it up, it turned out that there really was poison in his blood, which Rihanna had originally spoken about. Everyone was in great surprise when it turned out that the head doctor had made a mistake. All the doctors immediately started whispering and accepted the rumors that she was the queen of poisons for real. Looking at the head doctor, Rihanna realized that it was time to put pressure on him, otherwise he might have time to correct important records. Noting that the patient's condition had not yet stabilized, the princess ordered that he be transferred to the post-operative ward. Turning to Edward, the girl said that she needed to talk to the head doctor. Hearing this, the guy was very surprised, and the girl began to ask if he could stay with Ares. Knowing it was best to tell Edward everything, Rihanna revealed that they had made a bet. She said that he would give her anything she asked for if her diagnosis was correct. Noting that she only needed one thing, Rihanna clarified that it was the Empress's medical record. Edward was very surprised to hear this because he didn't quite understand why she needed it. The head doctor immediately began to say that the patient had not even regained consciousness and they could not yet be sure. He immediately began to shake with fear when His Majesty suddenly asked if he was making fun of him. Standing to the side and looking at this whole situation, Rihanna realized that she didn't even need to say anything. Noting that they had just discovered that the blood test results had poison in them, Edward began screaming about how he could stand his ground until the very end. The prince ordered that the medical record of Her Majesty the Empress be brought immediately. He said that members of the imperial family were allowed to review each other's map records, unless the Empress herself forbade them to be shown. The head physician, angry, bowed his head and said that he understood him. In the Garnet Palace, in her office, Rihanna was going about her business. Exhaling heavily, she noted to herself that she had finally gotten around to writing these notes. At that moment, Zenith entered the room and reminded Her Majesty about the medicine for Mrs. Hemian Martin. When the princess asked if she was awake, the maid reported that she was not, but her complexion had improved significantly. Thinking that the work would never end, she said that in that case she would take up the preparation of medicines. Hemian Martin is in the final stages of the Bichwa infection, and of course, Rihanna didn't expect that she would wake up in a couple of days. Despite this, the heroine was simply glad that she did not die, because knowing that she lost everything because of Cassian, Rihanna found it surprising that Hemian did not turn her blade on her. The girl was overcome by a sickening feeling, and that's why she wanted to run away from Cassian much earlier. She didn't want to be a part of it at all, so she wanted to break their bonds as soon as possible. If only it weren't for this disease, she would have been able to carry out her plan of action much earlier. She decided that everything was for the best after all, because the Hemian Ares were able to survive. For all those who were sacrificed by Cassian, Rihanna decided to give back more than they had sacrificed. When Zenith entered the room at that moment and called out to her, she said that she was already on her way. She understood perfectly well that it was not that she was stuck, but on the contrary, she was moving forward. Sometime later, Rihanna, sitting in her office, got to work. Taking the paper in her hands, she finally decided to look at the head physician's report on all of the Empress's illnesses. After studying it, the girl learned that the Empress complained of pain when exposed to light. In particular, she has severe eye irritation, headaches, and dizziness, as well as dilated pupils. This was quite expected by the heroine, but she was very surprised to see the ingredients for the recipe. She knew that they all protected the eyes, but many of them were designed to block out light. After reading the report further, the girl also learned that the dosage of these drugs continues to increase. This meant that Her Majesty had been living without light for almost a year and must have spent all that time in the dark. Reina knew that even if she felt pain when exposed to light, it was still the wrong treatment. The Empress's condition would only worsen, and it could even lead to blindness, and the heroine understood that it was impossible that someone from the hospital did not know this. She immediately began to remember how it was dark in the Empress's bedroom, and how the senior maid brought medicine to the Empress as if it were a normal thing. After taking this medicine, her pupils immediately dilated and her vision became unfocused. All this indicated that her condition was very serious, and now she was at a stage where she could not bear even the weakest light. When Zenith asked if she wanted to bring something to drink, she agreed and asked for it to be sweet. Thinking again, Rihanna could not understand how she could tell Her Majesty about this and how to help her. She knew that this condition was caused by a person not seeing light for too long. The heroine could not know for sure whether the Empress would believe her if she told her that she had to be exposed to the light, even though it was very painful. At the same time, Rihanna had to be much more careful because the Empress is second in rank only to the Emperor and currently rules the inner palace. At the same time, the Empress seems to have great confidence in the head physician, so she could not simply be told that his treatment was wrong. Any thoughts Rihanna had about this being too difficult, considering she barely trusted her, were immediately dashed when there was a knock on the door. She was quite surprised and couldn't understand why he was there when Edward suddenly walked into her office. Coming closer, the guy asked if she wanted to have dinner with him. Taking a closer look at the girl, he realized that she seemed to never stop working. The girl agreed when he clarified that this was the card she had asked the head physician about. Having clarified that the Empress had problems with her eyes, Edward reported that the head physician had assured her that he could stop the progression of the disease, but that it could not be cured. He was very surprised when Rihanna suddenly asked if he would believe her if she said it could be cured. When he asked if this was possible, the girl asked if she could personally examine Her Majesty. She said that without a personal examination, she cannot say anything yet. Saying that he would organize the meeting himself, Edward said that he would tell her the situation and try to convince her. Hearing this, Rihanna breathed a sigh of relief because she was afraid that he would refuse. Extending his hand, Edward suggested that they finish their work now and spend the evening together. Rihanna was quite surprised, but without thinking twice, she extended her hand in response. At that moment, at the Imperial Medical Center, one of the doctors ran into the head physician's office with a huge smile. The head doctor was completely horrified when the guy reported that the knight had woken up this morning. He couldn't believe his ears when he learned that the examination showed that he was completely healthy, as if nothing had happened to him. Realizing that his diagnosis and treatment had been wrong, the man was horrified that his position as chief physician was now in jeopardy. When asked how something like this could happen, the employee smiled and noted that Her Highness is incredibly talented. He was completely perplexed when the head doctor, calling him a brat, began shouting about what an aristocrat could possibly know about medicine. After telling her it was just a coincidence, the man began shouting that although her method had worked this time, relying on luck does not mean being a doctor. Looking at the angry head doctor with bewilderment, the employee said with a trembling voice that in that case he would leave. The head physician was very concerned that the crown princess was interested in Her Majesty's notes, but he still understood that she would not be able to understand them anyway. He believed that the crown princess certainly could not know about those herbs that did not even grow on their continent. At the same time, the head physician also decided that it would be better to remove the seeds of doubt. Sometime later, arriving at the Empress's chambers, the head physician asked with concern how she was feeling today. Upon learning that everything was as usual, the man asked permission to examine her a little. Having received permission, he, asking for a little patience, began the examination, saying that she needed to have a massage regularly. The Empress did not quite understand what he was talking about when the head physician suddenly noted that he should learn a thing or two from the crown princess. She asked what had happened to him when she learned that the crown princess's guard had suddenly lost consciousness in the palace infirmary yesterday. The head doctor reported that he had developed a long-term infection that had led to poisoning of the body, and the queen, who did not quite understand, asked what this had to do with the crown princess. Noting that she was also at the palace, the man said that the crown princess, upon seeing the situation, insisted on conducting the examination herself. He reported that she mentioned that she had studied medicine while staying with the duke. When the Empress reported that she had already heard that she had managed to neutralize a very dangerous poison, the man agreed. When he suggested that she also wanted to test her skills this time, the Empress was quite surprised. The head doctor told her that she had stated that he had made an incorrect diagnosis and had interfered with other doctors, but that there had been no complications since the patient had recovered. The Empress decided to ask again if she really did this, because Rihanna did not seem like a person capable of such a thing. Noting that his cautious nature had only made things worse, the head physician said he had given the treatment careful thought, which had alarmed Her Highness. When the Empress pointed out that his reputation had probably been damaged among other doctors, the man, declaring that this was not the case, said that he was very grateful that he could be of service. A wicked grin appeared on his face when the Empress suddenly asked what the crown princess was doing there anyway, and he informed her that she wanted to meet him. When the woman learned that she had demanded the Empress's map, she became angry enough to report that the crown princess had indeed gone out of her way to obtain it. The Empress noted for herself that, as expected, these rumors were not unfounded. After apologizing for disturbing her, the head physician noted that he should not have raised the issue. The Empress immediately thanked him, saying that no one else could prepare the medicine, and he could come as often as he needed. Having thanked Her Majesty, the head physician left with the thought that everything had gone well. He was very pleased that now, no matter what the crown princess said, Her Majesty would definitely protect him. The man was very surprised when he looked up and saw the crown prince and crown princess standing in front of him, who were no less surprised. Not understanding what they were doing there, the head physician assumed that they were there to visit the Empress. After bowing, the head physician said that he was very glad to see them, and the crown prince noted that they had not seen each other for a long time. Agreeing with him, the man noted that he was just leaving after examining Her Majesty, and Edward noted that he had done a good job. Smiling, he noted that there was nothing wrong with that, since the Empress trusted him completely, and he would give his life for her, and the head physician announced that he was already leaving. Watching him go, Rihanna wasn't particularly pleased with what a flatterer he was. The boy agreed and noted that they should have done this earlier, when the princess announced that they were paying their respects to Her Majesty for the first time. Rana was sure that they were not speaking about her in a very pleasant way, and she also understood that the Empress might not trust everything the doctor said. Despite this, she was exhausted both physically and mentally, so the heroine knew that she would definitely not listen to a daughter-in-law like her. The Empress said that they did not have to come and greet her every day. Noting that she was tired, she also said that the crown princess was also clearly busy, so once a week would be quite enough. Having thanked her for her attention, Rihanna nevertheless asked her to contact her if she needed to talk to someone. She was already expecting a cold reception, so she understood that it was still too early to talk about the eyes. Although the girl did not know what exactly she and the doctor had talked about, she now clearly understood that the head doctor was aware that the Empress's treatment was incorrect. She bowed and said that in that case she should rest, when the Empress said that she had enough friends and they could go now. As she left the chambers, Rihanna suddenly turned her attention to the head maid. Seeing her face, she was very surprised that she could not understand at all why he looked so calm. Even though the heroine knew that she hated her, she still didn't understand why she would behave like that now. Realizing that something was definitely wrong, she decided that she needed to order Zenid to speed up the investigation. Lost in thought, Rihanna realized that perhaps this wouldn't be as easy as she thought. She reported that everything was fine when Edward, noting that he was sorry, pointed out that his mother was not usually so judgmental. Thanking her for her understanding, he asked her what her plans were for the evening and learned that she was going to the infirmary. In a despondent state, the guy suddenly noted that he had thought the same about Her Majesty the Empress. Edward asked her how she knew that when she told him not to worry, and that villains always got what they deserved. Looking at him with a smile, Rihanna asked him to wait and see for himself. A little while later, with the understanding that Edward had returned to himself, Rihanna decided that now was the best time to look for the Imperium. With the thought that the Imperial Garden was on the way to the infirmary, she decided that she could easily slip into the inner garden by saying that she was sightseeing. The Imperial Garden was divided into 2 zones, one of which was a public garden open to all comers. The second garden was closed, accessible only to the Imperial family, and the Imperium, the cure for her illness, was to be kept in it. When she asked Zenida to leave her alone, the maid agreed, saying that she would wait there. Although the Imperium was very important, Rena was very interested in how beautiful the garden would be. When she arrived, she was horrified and could not believe that this was really a royal garden. Seeing such a mess, she could only assume that they did not have a gardener to look after the garden. Hoping that everything was okay with the Imperium, she went to look for it. Rihanna exclaimed with joy when she finally found it. Looking at them carefully, she saw that they were a little droopy, but overall, they were in perfect order. All she needed were fully bloomed petals, because that was the only way she could use them. Having plucked one of the petals, the girl carefully placed it in her mouth. Rihanna was very surprised when she chewed it, because it turned out to be much sweeter than she expected. Although she would have gladly eaten more, she still knew that she would be in trouble if someone caught her. Her surprise knew no bounds when she turned around and saw Edward in front of her. Standing up, she only hoped that he hadn't seen her eating the flowers, because she didn't know how many he had seen. Not knowing what he was thinking, the girl also could not understand how he ended up here if he was going to return to his place. The girl didn't know what to say, when suddenly Edward asked her what she was doing there. Not understanding what the stare was about, Rihanna awkwardly said that she just wanted to look at the flowers. Noting that he had asked about something else, the guy asked what exactly she had done with the petals. Pretending that she had no idea what he was talking about, the girl said that she didn't know any petals. She was very surprised when the guy extended his hand and said that there was a petal on the corner of her mouth. Noting that it didn't exactly look like she'd been eating them, Edward couldn't figure out what they were doing right there on her face. Rihanna immediately blushed in embarrassment and realized why the petals felt so sticky to her. With great awkwardness, the girl said that she liked the Imperium and decided to smell them. Noting that all the flowers here were rare, Edward asked if she knew about it, in response to which, Rihanna said that her mother really liked these flowers. She knew she had to come up with a good excuse to come back here again, so she started telling them that she had heard a lot about them from her. The girl told him that she had come to the Imperial Garden to think about her thoughts, and when she saw them, she felt so happy that she wanted to come up and smell them. She was very happy but didn't show it when she realized that he had bought it. Turning to the guy, Rihanna asked if he would mind if she came here to admire the Imperium. Noting that although it was only for a year, Edward informed her that she was the crown princess and was free to go wherever she pleased. He was very surprised when the girl thanked him with a bright smile. Noting that he had previously said that he had a lot of work, Rihanna suddenly asked why he was here. The guy said that he thought it would be good to see Aries first, so he came back here for her. He said that they were close friends and he might be offended if he did not visit him at least once. Rihanna was glad she found the Imperium, but all the herbs that could be used as medicine were almost wilted, so she had the idea to take care of them. With a bright smile on his face and a blush on his cheeks, Aries greeted everyone. Edward noted that, judging by his voice, he had already recovered, and Rihanna reported that the speed of his recovery was amazing. Aries was horrified and could not believe that they were going to stick this needle into him when the girl asked for his hand. After asking him to stand still, Rihanna asked him how he managed to poison himself with such a rare poison. Seeing that the blood looked better than yesterday, she informed him that if his test results were good, he could return to his normal routine. She reported that he complained like a little child when, after she told him not to forget to take his medicine, he said he hated them. Having asked to be gentle with him, as with a child, Ares decided to inquire what kind of poison he had been poisoned with. Noting that it is most often found on the southern continent, Rihanna said that the name of the virus is an anactogram. Within a few hours, bleeding begins, followed by death, and although sometimes someone with a strong body removes some of the poison through frequent visits to the toilet, the disease remains stable. The girl asked him to be more careful next time when Ares thanked her, because if it weren't for her, it could have led to a fatal outcome. She noted that it was too much when he stated with complete confidence that from now on, his body would be dedicated to the protection of Her Majesty. After telling the prince that she needed to meet with the head doctor, Rihanna asked if he was staying there. Hearing that he was also leaving soon, the girl noted with a smile that in that case they would see each other later. Zenid, holding the suitcase in her hands, immediately agreed when Rihanna asked if she had forgotten what they had talked about earlier. The maid reported that it was Her Highness the Crown Princess, when after her knock on the door, the head physician's voice was heard, saying that he asked not to be disturbed. At that very moment, the door opened, and after greeting the princess, the head physician asked with a smile what brought her here. Looking at him with a smirk, Rihanna said that there was something she wanted to ask him. Already in the office, the girl asked whether Her Majesty the Empress's eyes were being treated properly. Having said that he understood her concern for Her Majesty, the head physician explained that this disease was not treatable. When the girl clarified that he meant that it was incurable, the man said that it was a natural disease that could come with age. Finding this strange, Rihanna said that she once saw a person with the same symptoms, and it was a 7-year-old child. He immediately hesitated and did not know what to answer when she clarified that he meant that the child also suffered from aging. Pretending to cough in order to pass the time, the head physician took a sip of the tea that Zenid had just drunk. He said it was probably another disease and he couldn't say anything without examining her. Rihanna reported that the symptoms were the same as Her Majesty's and cast a cold glance at the man sipping tea. The head doctor started talking about the fact that most likely there was a difference, and she couldn't say anything because she didn't have a doctor's license. Looking at him, the girl clarified that Her Majesty's illness was caused by aging, and the only thing that helped was the medicine he had prepared. Putting a cup of tea on the table, the head physician agreed with her words with a smile. Noting this as excellent, Rihanna said that in that case she would leave Her Majesty in her care. As she left, the heroine thought with a smile on her face that her task was completed, and now all she had to do was wait. Sometime later, rumors began to circulate among the servants that the head physician had changed the curtains in his office to very thick ones. When the Empress learned that the reason he had not shown up here for some time was the same illness, she was greatly surprised. Noting that this seemed to be the case, the head maid noted that this explained why he had not come to examine her recently. The Empress did not quite understand what she was talking about when the maid reported that very disturbing rumors began to spread throughout the palace. She was horrified when she learned that everyone was saying that Her Highness's illness could be contagious, because the head doctor said that it was due to aging. It had been just over a year since the disease first appeared, and no one had become infected, so the Empress believed that it was her age. At this point, the head maid said that she could not believe these shameful rumors because Her Majesty could not suffer from such an illness. At the same time, she noted that despite this, public opinion in the palace is restless. The maid noted that it would be wise to consider keeping a low profile now before people started gossiping. Usually, when someone stops performing their duties, they usually close the palace gates and begin to avoid any outside contact. If a person goes into seclusion because of illness, then everything continues until death, especially if it is contagious. Noting that something so serious had happened due to illness, the Empress said that everything was pointless, since even the Empress had ended everything this way. Years have passed since His Majesty lost heart, and although he is still alive, doctors have long said that there is no hope for recovery. The Empress understood that now she, as Empress, had to make her choice and as quickly as possible. Having ordered everything to be prepared for isolation, the woman announced that she would leave with His Majesty. She did this not for her own desires, but for the safety of the Empire. A few days later, in Rihanna's office, a maid informed her that Her Majesty was preparing for seclusion. Having learned about this, the girl was quite surprised, because although she was expecting news, it turned out to be more extraordinary than expected. Zenida also reported that it was said that the head maid, Blanche, was the one who first suggested the idea to her. She didn't quite understand what was going on when Rihanna pointed out that it was as if she had suggested it while waiting for an opportunity. Noting that something didn't add up, the girl said that if she really cared about Her Majesty, she wouldn't have suggested something so drastic. When she inquired about the investigation into Blanche Kemmer, the maid informed her that the Earl's family was too secure, but she would try to speed up the process. Agreeing with this, Rihanna also asked about when Her Highness plans to isolate herself. Her surprise knew no bounds when she learned that this would happen after the end of preparation, and perhaps as early as tomorrow. She knew it was too fast because seclusion was not something that could be prepared so quickly. Saying that they were very impatient, Rihanna and her maid headed to the Empress's palace. Standing in front of the door, she listened with great surprise as Edward begged his mother not to do this and to continue taking the medicine. Although he tried to convince her that the disease was not contagious, the Empress, having told him not to approach, did not intend to change her decision. He didn't know what to say when she started talking about how she didn't want to take any risks and didn't want him to end up the same way. They were in great surprise when Rihanna appeared out of nowhere and told them that this was not true. With complete confidence, she reported that Her Highness's eye disease was absolutely not contagious. Seeing Edward there, looking at the girl in surprise, she was pleasantly surprised. Turning to Her Majesty, the girl reported that she had no reason to worry. The Empress was greatly surprised when the girl told her that she had already seen a child with the same illness as her. She couldn't believe her ears, and Rihanna clarified that the child was 7 years old at the time. Rihanna said that her mother cured him, and now he lives a healthy life in the sun with clear eyes. The Empress did not understand what was being discussed when, after her words about the head physician, the girl said that she herself had wondered why they were giving a poisonous drug instead of medicine. Rihanna revealed that these eye drops become toxic if used to treat Her Majesty. When the Empress asked why the head doctor would write her the wrong prescription, the heroine suggested that she check everything herself. Noting that she had heard that the head doctor had fallen ill with the same disease, she asked whether it would not be easier to check if she herself was taking the same medicine. After thinking for a moment, the Empress called the head maid. Blanche immediately agreed when the Empress ordered that the court physician be brought to her and that it was urgent. Seeing this, Rihanna was quite surprised that the head maid would go by herself, because she knew that this was the concern of the ordinary servants. Although there were already plenty of ordinary servants, the senior maid never left the Empress's side. Assuming that there was some kind of connection between the senior maid and the head doctor, the heroine realized that she couldn't let her go alone. Saying that he was now refusing to receive anyone, Rihanna suggested that His Highness the Crown Prince accompany her. She noted that he would definitely not refuse him, and Edward, considering it a good idea, agreed. Realizing that Edward also suspected something, the girl waited for the doctor's reaction with a smirk on her face. Sometime later, the head maid and the Crown Prince brought the head physician to the Empress's chambers. Falling to his knees, the man began to ask for forgiveness and shout that he had not been able to come to her for several days because he had problems with his vision. He began to deny everything when the Empress pointed out that he had indeed contracted her illness, when suddenly she ordered the curtains to be drawn. His words about it possibly impairing her vision were followed by a loud scream as bright sunlight became visible in the room. Looking at him, Rihanna noticed traces of eye drops and assumed that he used them in a panic, not knowing what to do. A few days ago, after holding out the flask, Rihanna asked Zenid to pack this too. Having clarified that this was for the doctor, she said that with this she would find out what this man was hiding. She told him it was a poison that caused pain when exposed to light, and the effect would wear off naturally after a month, and asked him to put it in his tea. Zenid followed her instructions, and now he must be experiencing pain that even painkillers cannot suppress. Despite this, Rihanna knew that compared to what the Empress had gone through, this was nothing. When the Empress asked him what had happened, the head physician began to beg for the curtains to be closed. Having reported that it seemed to her that he had poor vision, the Empress asked in bewilderment whether more light would not help him see better. His eyes filled with horror, and he began to apologize when the Empress ordered him to bring the candle closer to him. Continuing to apologize, he said that he had the same symptoms as her, and he believed that they were signs of aging. When the Empress asked why he had lied to her, he said that he was afraid that she would mistake it for an epidemic. When the Empress clarified that he meant that it was not contagious, the doctor agreed and continued to say that it was due to aging. Rihanna immediately thought about it because she knew that Blanche said that it was an epidemic, but now the doctor claims that it is not contagious. She realized that even though they worked together, their stories did not match, which meant they were not particularly close. Rihanna assumed that it was a temporary union that broke up immediately after the doctor fell ill, and Blanche probably left him. After saying she doubted it was due to aging, the Empress revealed that the Crown Princess had said that even the child had the same symptoms. Asking to remember that he was not a professional doctor, the man said that if he had examined the child, he might have made a different diagnosis. Noting that he had already lied to her, Her Highness asked what was stopping him from doing it again. She started to say that she was a rare case and that no one around her had such symptoms, but from what he was telling her, it was clear that it was contagious. With a heavy sigh, she threw the bottle of drops on the floor and ordered him to use them. He asked why she was giving it to him, to which the Empress replied that since it was painful, she was giving it to him on purpose. When the head physician began to say that he was fine, the angry Empress said that this was an order. Taking the drops in his hands, the man thought for a moment and began to say that this medicine was prepared specifically for her and that it was not suitable for him. He started talking about how the formula was designed for her body and for him. With milder symptoms, it should be diluted. Handing him another bottle, Rihanna informed him that he shouldn't worry. She reported that she had brought a dose intended to treat the earliest stage of symptoms. Having spoken about all the ingredients added there, the girl noted that everything was in the same proportion that he had originally prescribed for Her Majesty. Rihanna understood that he had no choice, because she had thoroughly prepared for this performance. Noticing that his eyes were bloodshot, she asked him to use these drops, which could ease his pain. The head physician looked at those very drops in horror, silently, when suddenly the Empress asked why he froze. He bowed his head guiltily when the Empress suggested that they contained something that was not fit for human consumption. Jumping up from his seat, the head doctor began to assert that this was not so and that he would never have done such a thing. Looking at him at that moment, Rihanna could not understand how he dared to sit like that and lie right to Her Highness's face. She understood that he knew perfectly well what this medicine could do, or rather blindness and addiction to this medicine. With trembling hands, the man opened the bottle of drops and timidly began to bring it to his eye. He was very surprised when the Empress suddenly asked him if this medicine was so terrible that he himself did not dare to use it. When he began to deny everything, Her Majesty said that she had already seen enough. Having informed him that she trusted him, the Empress ordered him to be thrown into prison because he would be severely punished for his crime. The knights immediately grabbed the man, and he began to beg the Empress not to do this. Having said that he would do so, he poured the drops into his eye, asking Her Highness to look at it. Asking what good it would do to use it now, the Empress said that his actions spoke louder than words. The head physician was completely horrified when the Empress ordered the criminal to be taken away immediately. Everyone was in great shock when he suddenly turned to the head maid. He started talking about how she knew the truth and how much he worked on them. With complete horror on his face, he began to beg her to tell everything to Her Majesty, saying that it was all a misunderstanding. Not understanding what he was talking about, the senior maid said that she trusted him and let him near Her Majesty, which she now regrets very much. The Crown Prince ordered the criminal to be taken away immediately, while the head physician himself could not believe that Blanche had done this to him. The Empress and the head maid watched in silence as the man continued to beg for mercy. Turning to Blanche, the Empress asked her why the head physician had asked her for help. She didn't quite understand what she meant when the maid told her that he was seeking pity from Her Highness in this way, so she gave him some privileges. Blanche reported that she helped him take a worthy place in the palace, and also allowed him to come here without being accompanied by guards. Bowing her head, she began to say that she deeply regretted crossing the line and allowing him to forget his place. Turning to the Empress, Blanche said that she deserved punishment. Rihanna knew that when someone sincerely admits their guilt and asks for forgiveness like that, nothing more can be done. Besides, providing the head physician with some amenities is not unusual, so Her Majesty probably understands that it is difficult to regard this as a serious offense. Noting that she believed it was for her own good, the Empress asked her to be more restrained from that moment on, in response to which the maid immediately thanked her. Seeing that his mother was unwell, Edward ran up to her and told her that he would handle the interrogation himself and that she should rest. Having said that she wanted to reveal the head doctor's intentions until the very end, she noted that her body was too weak. Suddenly, full of confidence, Rihanna asked Her Majesty if she could examine her eyes. Hearing this, the Empress was quite surprised, and looking closely at the girl, she saw confidence in her. Nodding her head, Her Majesty agreed and said that she could begin. When Rihanna reported that she had heard that Her Majesty had rarely left the palace since she had fallen ill, the Empress agreed. When asked how often a week she went for a walk, the woman said that it was once a week or even less often. After asking permission, Rihanna said that she believed that Her Majesty had developed the Latvian disease. She said it was a disease caused by prolonged lack of sunlight. When the Empress clarified that this all happened because she rarely went outside, the girl agreed. Asking if there was any way to cure her, the Empress said that she wanted to get rid of this pain as soon as possible. Placing a cloth over her eyes, Rihanna informed her that for now she should lie down and get a good rest, as her eyes were very tired. Noting that, according to the head physician's orders, Her Majesty's eyes were damaged, the girl said that she would first use medications that would restore the optic nerves. At the same time, she also announced that the Empress should appear in public more often. Seeing that she was hesitant to answer, Rihanna understood that although the pain from the light was unbearable, without the influence of light, this disease became incurable. Noting that she was confident that she would recover, Rihanna suggested that she stand in the sun again and feel the breeze on her skin. She said that if this continued, she would go completely blind, so she offered a little to start with. After thinking for a bit, the Empress finally agreed and ordered the curtains to be opened slightly. Already in the evening, standing over a table with many ingredients, Rihanna thought that she needed to finish the treatment of the Empress as soon as possible. She knew that first she needed to remove all the drugs prescribed by the head doctor and create a medicine to restore the optic nerves. Then she had to create a painkiller because the Empress would need something powerful to withstand even the sight of light. With the idea that it had to be a formula that was not addictive, the girl realized that medication alone was not enough. The maid clarified what would happen to dinner in that case when the heroine asked Zenid to prepare to leave for the imperial palace. Thinking about it, Rihanna suddenly realized that after that incident, dinner with Edward had become a kind of unspoken rule. Her evening routine consisted of checking on Hemion and later going to dinner with Julian. Turning to Zenid, the girl asked to tell the Crown Prince that she would miss today's dinner. With the thought that Edward was probably busy interrogating the head doctor, she decided that nothing bad would happen if she missed one dinner. Sometime later, sitting in his office, the prince, noting that it was already dinner time, asked Freck to get ready to send him to the palace. He was quite surprised when a courtier reported that a message had just arrived from Her Highness. Freck reported that the princess had conveyed that she was too busy to attend the meal and assumed that she was indeed busy preparing medicine for the Empress. Edward was quite surprised by this, and the guy also said that she also asked him to tell him not to worry, since he was probably also busy. Having stated that in that case he would dine later, the prince suggested returning to the interrogation of the head physician. Seeing his reaction, Freck thought he was upset, but he assumed it was just his imagination. Listening to the constant orders that Her Majesty urgently summoned her, Rihanna, sighing heavily, thought about how many times she had been summoned there. With the thought that this had happened at least 5 times, the girl thought that she continued to complain of pain, and this slowed down the effect of the medicine. The only thing Rihanna could do was check her condition and give her more painkillers. She understood that the Empress continued to call her because she was very worried and upset, because this pain was unbearable. The heroine knew that once she started proper treatment, the pain would subside and she should be ready for that day. At that moment, a maid ran into the room and announced that Her Majesty urgently needed to be checked. Noting that she understood, Rihanna said that she would go to her right away. The heroine was not in the best condition at all, and if her symptoms worsened, she would not even be able to feel pain normally. Thinking that it was a good thing she had managed to prepare the stimulant in advance, she took the medicine. She immediately went to the Empress, thinking that she needed to be patient a little longer. Seeing the terrible state of Her Majesty, Rihanna said that she would give her another dose of painkillers. At this moment, the head maid asked the Empress whether the medicine was really helping her. Blanche noted that no matter how many doses she was given, she was clearly not getting better. Rihanna suggested that perhaps the addiction caused by the previous medication was making the pain worse, but found it odd that the painkiller had no effect. The Empress said she didn't know and was hurt when the girl asked if she was feeling better. Noting that it was better than taking nothing, Rihanna said she was currently administering the medication. She noticed that something was definitely wrong here, because she knew that the painkiller should have a long-lasting effect. Assuming that she needed to stay and observe her condition, the heroine decided not to do this because if she eliminated the root cause, the pain would go away on its own. Knowing that she needed to complete her treatment as soon as possible, Rihanna asked that she be called immediately if she was in pain again. The very next morning, when the sun was bright and high in the sky, the girl finally finished making the medicine. She was very pleased that she had finished it on time because now Her Majesty would feel much better. When Xanad thanked the princess for her hard work, the girl immediately turned to her. Noting that she must have worked so hard, the maid came closer and reported that her clothes were in complete disarray. Rihanna was very surprised when she silently handed the note into her hand at that moment. When the maid announced that she was already leaving, the girl thanked her and asked her to spread the news that Her Highness's treatment was already completed. The heroine knew that Xanad only passed on notes in cases where it was information that should not leak. Looking at the papers, she assumed that this was the report she had asked for. Upon opening the letter, she found out that, as expected, Blanche Kemmer had embezzled funds from the Tishurit Palace budget. Rihanna had her suspicions ever since she became head maid, but the scale was bigger than she thought. At the same time, part of the money spent went into the head physician's pocket, and obviously there was some kind of conspiracy between them. Rihanna knew that this wasn't enough because they would deny it and say it was all fake. She needed to find something worthwhile that would shed light on everything that was happening. Sometime later, arriving at the Empress's chamber, Rihanna greeted her with a smile. She reported that this was so when the Empress remarked that she had heard that the medicine was ready. Having handed over the bottle, the girl said that her condition would improve if she took it regularly and asked her to drink it all at once. Looking at her with disdain, the head maid suddenly asked if she could say something first. When the Empress asked what she wanted to say, the girl noted that Her Majesty was in a weak physical and mental state. The maid advised that she might want to wait to take the medication until a specialist confirmed its safety. Rihanna wanted to object when suddenly the Empress asked where they could find such a person now. Despite Blanche's further objections, Her Highness noted that she would not last long, and besides, the Crown Princess had proven her skill in past incidents. Hearing this, the head maid bowed her head to Her Majesty and apologized. At the same time, she also apologized to the Crown Princess, noting that she had crossed the line. The main character was extremely surprised to see Selphinia pollen on the maid's hair and could not understand how she could have gotten it, since she was constantly in the palace. Along with this, she also saw green stains on all of her clothes, although she was not one of those who did not care about her appearance. Rihanna knew that such spots would not appear unless she was walking through thick, overgrown grass. Seeing that the Empress had taken the medicine, the girl said that at first it would be hard for her, but soon she would feel relief. With a smile on her face, the Empress said that she very much hoped for this. Leaving the Empress's chambers, Rihanna wondered if she would be able to go to the closed garden now, since she had not been able to take the Aparium yesterday. She was very surprised when someone addressed her, and looking up, she saw Edward. He agreed, noting that he was already late when the girl asked if he had come because he had learned that the medicine for Her Majesty was ready. She asked him not to worry, saying that she had personally delivered the medicine, after which the prince thanked her. Looking at him, Rihanna couldn't understand why he froze and what else he wanted to say. When he asked if she planned to go to the infirmary now, the girl said that she wanted to take a little walk. Rihanna was extremely surprised when the prince announced that he would then accompany her. The guy asked her in bewilderment why she was surprised, while she was thinking that she couldn't show him how she ate flowers. She was quite surprised when Edward suddenly reminded her that they hadn't managed to have lunch yesterday. The guy said that since she had said she would be busy, he brought sandwiches and suggested they eat in the garden nearby. Rihanna couldn't believe that he actually came here not only for the Empress, but also to have dinner with her. Assuming that this was sincerity, she wondered if it was too much for those around her, even if they were a couple in love. Turning awkwardly to Edward, she informed him that he really didn't have to go that far. When the guy asked what she was talking about, she said that it was quite normal for married couples not to see each other for several days, and that most people lived like that. Rihanna said that she appreciated his concern, but he didn't have to change his plans for her because she felt awkward. Edward said that he felt sympathy and gratitude towards her because she had done so much for his mother. Noting that everything was fine, the girl said that if there was a patient, she always did everything in her power. Smiling at what he heard, Edward clarified that his mother was not an empress to her, but simply a patient. Rihanna was very surprised when, after asking for permission, he told her that he was sincerely grateful to her for everything she had done. The guy told her not to forget to take care of herself too, and when she told him, she herself should thank him for being able to help Her Majesty. She admitted with great awkwardness that she had drunk tea when the guy asked her if she had eaten anything yesterday. Realizing that her stomach had become too weak to eat properly, Rihanna apologized. She was surprised when the guy handed her a plate of sandwiches and asked her to eat whatever she wanted. Suddenly, the heroine decided to ask the guy if there was a Selfinia tree in the Tishurit Palace, which surprised the guy quite a bit. She asked again if there was a grassy area when the guy pointed out that her mother had never been interested in landscaping. Noting that this was a stupid question, Edward said that this was the Imperial Palace and that this could not be. Rihanna revealed that she actually noticed some Selfinia pollen on the headmaid's hair. When the prince learned that there were also greenish stains on her dress, he found this strange. Edward said that this tree grows in the palace, and it just so happens that this place is next to the castle walls where no one looks. When the girl pointed out that it was essentially an empty space, the prince said that the empress's maid had no reason to go there, leaving her sick mistress. This meant that Blanche left the Tishurit Palace just before Rihanna left to visit the empress. At this point, Edward reported that he understood why the head doctor had said during interrogation that he would name the person who ordered it if they could guarantee his safety. He told the girl that he was constantly making scenes, saying that prison was very dangerous for him. Rihanna couldn't believe her ears when the guy noted that at first he couldn't understand the meaning of his words. Edward, together with the girl and the maid, rushed into the dungeon at that very moment. When they opened the cell where the head doctor was, they saw a man sitting silently with his back turned to them. When the prince approached him and touched his shoulder, the head physician's lifeless body immediately fell to the floor. Rihanna immediately began checking her pulse, and the guy, sighing heavily, said that it looked like they were late. Realizing that his breathing had stopped, the main character could not decide what to do. The prince turned to the girl questioningly when, after thinking for a moment, she tore the doctor's shirt. He didn't understand what she was talking about when she suddenly started listing the herbs she needed. Having reported that the doctor was still alive, Rihanna confidently said that they could still save him. She reported that not much time had passed since he was attacked, and the poisoned needle was gradually spreading throughout his body. The girl turned to Zenid, saying that she first needed to find herbs and bring tools. She informed the maid that they did not have much time, but Zenid reassured her that the medical palace was nearby and she would get there as soon as she could. Noting that they would need the herbs within 3 minutes, the process said that she was not sure that they would have time. At that moment, Edward suddenly announced that he was going and took the paper from the girl's hands. Noting that they seemed to have forgotten, he revealed that he was not only the crown prince, but also a knight. He immediately rushed to get the necessary herbs, and Rihanna shouted after him that she was counting on him. The girl understood that she had to block the blood vessels before it was too late, and asked Zenid to hold off the doctor. Saying that she would now block the vessels leading to the heart, the girl asked him to hold it as tightly as possible. Taking the syringe in her hands, Rihanna began to close the vessels one by one with complete concentration. Just as she thought that all she had to do now was wait for Edward to return, she heard his voice behind her. She exclaimed happily when he handed over the package, suggesting that he seemed to have returned on time. Having thanked him, the girl said that she would start making the medicine right away. She knew that she had to first prepare an antidote and then reopen the blood vessels. With the thought that the head doctor had very little time left, she prayed that she would manage to make it in time. Sometime later, the Empress was in great shock when she learned from the Crown Princess that the chief physician had died. Her Majesty could not understand how a man who was in perfect health could die. Expressing her regrets, Rihanna reported that when they found him, his heart was no longer beating. She said she did everything she could to get his breathing back instantly, but in the end he only managed to leave a message. When the Empress asked what she meant, the Crown Princess said that they themselves had no idea what it meant. The girl said that the last words he said before he breathed his last were the numbers 36. The Empress was completely confused to hear what it was, but Rihanna reported that it seemed like he wanted to say something else, but his time was up. Turning to Blanche, the Empress asked if she had anything she wanted to tell her. With a surprised look, the headmaid said that she didn't understand anything at all. Her Highness asked again whether she knew anything about the death of the head physician. When the surprised maid asked if she was suspected, the woman reminded him that until the very end, the head doctor begged her to save him and eventually died. The Empress reported that there was obviously someone involved in this, and that someone had ordered the poisoning, and that only someone from the Imperial Palace could have done it. Looking at the Empress at that moment, Rihanna understood that even if she asked, she still would not be given an answer. She understood that the Empress was being straightforward about her suspicions, and if she was guilty, she hoped for a confession. After asking permission, the maid Blanche asked the Empress if she remembered where she had been all day. Noting that she was with Her Highness every minute, she began to swear that she had not left her side for a single step. The girl began to scream that she could be executed, but with such dishonor it would be better to die. Turning to her, the Empress said that they would sort it out themselves and conduct an investigation in the near future. Noting that she wanted to believe her, Her Majesty decided that it would be better to first rethink everything. When Blanche cried out again, the Empress said that she had to prove her innocence. When she informed her that she must remain in the palace without the possibility of leaving until the matter was resolved, the maid obeyed. Later, when night fell, Blanche Kammer left the Empress's chamber and went somewhere. She was horrified when suddenly a female voice was heard behind her, addressing her. Turning back with horror on her face, she was very surprised to see Her Highness the Crown Princess standing in front of her. Noting that she had been ordered to lock herself in the palace, Rihanna asked in bewilderment what she had forgotten in the chief physician's office. Asking what she was doing there, she showed the paper and asked if this was what she was looking for. Hearing this, the maid reported that Her Highness had also deciphered the meaning of the head physician's last words. She clarified that he meant the third row from the top shelf with medical books and the sixth section from the left. Rihanna, noting this truth, realized that she had hoped that the breath she had regained would not bring her here again. She knew that this subtle expression could only be recognized by someone who was truly acquainted with the head physician. Noting that she had understood his latest knowledge and had come here, the princess suggested that she must have been afraid that someone would discover the evidence first. The head maid immediately started saying that this was a misunderstanding and that she came here to find a document proving her innocence. She said that she didn't immediately understand the meaning of his words, but when she continued to think about it, it immediately dawned on her. Also, the head doctor had a habit of indicating the location of things using numbers. Noting that it was already late, she said that she had come here in a hurry because she had not been able to contact Her Majesty in time. Rihanna, upon hearing this, noted that she was good at making excuses, but at the same time knew perfectly well what was in the envelope. When Blanche asked if this meant that she had seen everything, the heroine smiled and said that it did. Rihanna, holding the envelope in her hand, assumed that this certainly proved that the head doctor's death was not in vain. She told her to confess, noting that this was her last chance. Continuing to deny everything, the maid said that it was all a trap set up by the head doctor to set her up. Realizing that she would deny everything to the end, the princess said that since she was not going to confess, she would not insist either. Rihanna said that she would present this document to Her Majesty that same morning, and until then the maid would sit here. At this moment, the head maid suddenly asked if Her Highness would agree to a deal with her. Having asked for this document to be given to her, she said that she would ensure that her future at court would be much more prosperous. The smile immediately disappeared from her face when, after her words, Rihanna's loud laughter was heard. After apologizing for not being able to hold back her laughter, the princess noted that the mongrel had begun to bark very loudly. Blanche said that she had offered her a chance to advance in the palace and carefully took the candlestick. With a loud cry that Her Highness definitely had a talent for making people angry, the maid threw a burning candle straight at the princess. Rihanna was very surprised, but with a deft movement of her hand, she grabbed the candlestick. Turning her gaze to Blanche, she saw how she decided to attack her. The maid didn't expect that Rihanna would dodge it so easily and then immediately knock her out with a blow to the neck. Having said that she was mistaken, the princess clarified that it was she who gave her the opportunity and nothing else. At such moments, Rihanna thanked fate that she was Cassian, because everyone who bore this surname was trained in the basics of martial arts and swordsmanship. At that moment, Edward ran into the room with a loud cry and began asking the girl if she was okay. He was completely perplexed when she, with an awkward smile, reported that everything was fine. When Rihanna revealed that she had attacked her, so she knocked her out, the prince noted that he should have stayed with her. The girl told him that in that case he would have revealed their presence, and the corridor turned out to be the best place. With a smile on her face, she informed him that, in any case, as far as he could see, she was perfectly fine. She turned to the guy questioningly when she noticed his anxious gaze directed downwards. When the guy asked to look at his hand, noting that it couldn't be called a hand, that it was fine, the girl couldn't quite understand his behavior. Rihanna said Blanche simply threw a candlestick at her that could have caught fire. She was horrified when she saw blood on her hand because she didn't even feel pain and couldn't see anything because of the darkness. When the guy asked in bewilderment that she had caught the candlestick with her bare hand, the girl said that she had panicked. After stating that if she hadn't done so, Blanche would have hit her in the face. Rihanna noted that it didn't hurt, and she caught it without any problem. She was very surprised when Edward grabbed her hand and angrily asked how she could think this was normal. He reported that it looked very painful when the girl noted that the wax had hardened and would not come off easily. When she started to say she was fine again, Edward informed her that if she was going to lie, she should make it more believable. Carefully removing the wax from the girl's hand, the guy asked if she had gone crazy. Noting that he was talking about Blanche, he said that she must be crazy to go against the crown princess. After his words, the girl thought about it, and looking up, she was quite surprised. She saw that even though he was unhurt, he looked like he was in more pain than she was. The very next morning, the Empress could not believe her ears when she learned that Blanche was indeed involved in everything. Her Highness was absolutely horrified when her son told her that the maid had even threatened the crown princess and caused her bodily harm. Having handed the papers to his mother, Edward said that these were documents left by the head physician. The Empress was absolutely horrified when she realized that these documents included full reports on the embezzlement of all budget funds, along with Blanche's handwritten instructions. Until now, Blanche had been handling many internal affairs in place of the Empress, who had lost interest in them. Along with this power, the head maid's greed only grew, and she hoped that she could take complete control of the palace if the Empress's condition did not improve. That is why she asked the doctor to create a medicine that would be harmful to the health of the Empress, and all this in order to become the real mistress of the palace. The Empress, with trembling hands, reported that Blanche was devoted to his cause, helping her, so she turned a blind eye to many things. Having said that this had crossed all boundaries, Her Highness could not believe that she had gone so far and stabbed her in the back. She said she would figure it out herself when Edward said they would begin interrogating her, but would not be able to punish her right away due to her being a high-ranking aristocrat. The prince said he was very worried that this could affect her health and asked his mother to rest, saying that they would sort everything out themselves. Already in prison, turning to Blanche Kemmer, the prince reported that she had conspired with the chief physician to harm the Empress and appropriate imperial funds. She said this was not the case when the prince also reported that she had threatened the crown princess the previous night, who had insisted on her confession. Blanche began to demand a noble trial, saying that she would prove her innocence there. Having informed her that the evidence was irrefutable, Edward asked what innocence she wanted to prove. The maid began to say that all these documents were fake and said that if they continued to accuse her, the Kemmer house would not be left out. Knowing that she plans to deny everything until the end, Rihanna noted that it was shameless because even if they had evidence, they would not be able to pass a harsh sentence without admitting her guilt. She knew that a noble trial that could bring a proper verdict could take a long time, and no one knew what the Kemmer family might have to say next. A noble house of that stature could easily have falsified evidence or put forward a scapegoat in her place. Rihanna knew that this was the reason she was stalling, and they needed to find a way around it. She knew that her guilt would be beyond dispute if 3 people testified to her crimes, and then they would be able to give her a harsh sentence. Noting that this was the last time he would do this, Rihanna asked again if Blanche would admit her guilt. When the maid reported that her answer remained the same, the girl replied that at this rate she could be sentenced to death, but Blanche only said that she did not dare to treat a nobleman like that. Rihanna clarified that if her crimes are exposed and 3 people testify against her, they can continue the investigation without her confession. Noting that this was impossible, Blanche grinned and said that her position remained the same and that she demanded a noble trial. At that very moment, the prince ordered the first witness to be brought in, Cayman Beldrick. When the first witness was brought into the dungeon, Blanche was in complete surprise and horror. Cayman Beldrick is a former chief physician who deliberately prescribed poisonous drugs to worsen the Empress's condition. He was the head doctor for 3 years and also became a man who returned from the dead. A few days ago, sitting over the lifeless body of the doctor, Raina thought about the fact that he still had not regained consciousness, although she had already opened the vessels. She couldn't understand if they were too late, because the effect of this poison should stop after the introduction of the antidote. Thinking that the rushed preparation had weakened his effectiveness, Rihanna decided to come clean. Edward was very surprised when the girl reported that it seemed the antidote had not worked. At that very moment, the head doctor woke up and began to cough loudly, which surprised Rena very much. Surprised that he had woken up, the girl asked him to tell them his name. Edward and Rihanna were very surprised when the former healer, albeit with a stutter, said that his name was Cayman Beldrick. In a barely alive voice, he began to speak about the fact that it was a dungeon in the palace, when they began to ask him if he knew where it was. When the doctor, seeing the prince in front of him, exclaimed, Rihanna noted with a smile that he had completely come to his senses. Rising from the floor, the man began to ask in bewilderment what had happened. He was in complete shock when the prince told him that his heart had stopped due to the spreading poison, and if it weren't for the princess, he would have been dead. The doctor immediately exclaimed that it was Blanche Kemmer, because she tried to kill him to destroy the evidence. When asked what evidence he was talking about, he said that he kept secret messages, a translation log, and she knew that he could expose her. The doctor immediately became flustered when Edward suddenly asked whether it would not be more appropriate to thank the princess first. Having begun to thank the crown princess, the former doctor began to say that from that day on he would dedicate his entire life to serving her. He agreed and said that he even staged his life when the princess asked if this meant that he would do whatever she said. The doctor was horrified when, having noted this as excellent, the crown princess asked him to die. After clarifying that he himself said that he would fake his death, Rihanna noted that all she needed now was his death. Sitting there in complete bewilderment, Cayman asked with a trembling voice what she meant. Rihanna reported that Blanche Kemmer is a high-ranking aristocrat, and even with compelling evidence, if she does not admit guilt, it will be difficult to punish her. When the physician asked if this meant they would not be able to punish Blanche, the princess said that this was not the case, and that they would need 3 or more witnesses. The girl clarified that they needed 2 more people, when Edward, noting that they needed 1 more person, asked what she planned to do. Rihanna was in great surprise when the prince told her that yesterday they had caught the man who tried to kill the head doctor. He said that he had several knights who were secretly following him, and when they saw what had happened to Cayman, he gave them orders to find the criminal. The girl was delighted and said that this was great, because now they definitely had every chance. When she noted that they still had 1 more witness to find, Edward asked how exactly she wanted to find him. Cayman exclaimed in surprise when, noting that they would set a trap, the girl said that the healer would have to die again. She said that if he died, Blanche would become less vigilant and more careless. Telling him not to worry, Rihanna explained that she would prepare a poison that would make him appear dead for a while. Looking at the living doctor, Blanche was in complete shock, and Cayman only noted that she looked rather unwell. He noted that she seemed very surprised that he was alive, since she was sure that she was able to kill him. Edward reported that Cayman Beldrick had already confessed to his crimes and was here today to give evidence. Cayman agreed when the prince turned to him and asked him to tell him everything he knew. Blanche was absolutely horrified when the doctor told her that he had been made head physician on the condition that he assist the head maid, who later ordered him not to treat the empress. Turning to the maid, Edward noted that this was the first witness and asked if she intended to confess. Hearing that the head doctor was trying to set her up, the crown prince noted that it was interesting to see how long she would continue to lie. He immediately ordered the second witness to be brought out, stating that his name was Pelil Nadan. Noting that he was the same as Cayman, the prince said that he had taken the post of gardener on the recommendation of the Kemmer family. When the prince, saying that he had tried to poison the head doctor, asked if he admitted his guilt, the man agreed. Blanche was beside herself with anger when the prince asked whose order he was carrying out, Pelil said that it was Blanche's head maid. Hearing this, Rihanna looked at the man in surprise, because she had heard that this man initially did not want to confess at all. Looking at Edward, she could not understand how he managed to get him to talk and what she tried with him. Noting that this was their second witness, the crown prince asked again whether she would continue to play the silent game. After a few seconds of silence, Kemmer Blanche again announced that she was demanding a noble trial. Saying that she was unwavering, the prince asked whether she was okay with the fact that after another witness, she would lose the chance of even a sincere confession. Having stated that she was innocent, Blanche asked what was expected of her if she had nothing to confess to. She was in complete shock when, without thinking twice, Edward ordered a third witness to be called. Raising her head, the headmaid did not expect to see a certain girl trembling with fear there. After stating that the girl's name was Latry Dale, the Crown Prince noted that she was a maid from the Tishurit Palace, and it seemed that they were acquainted. When the prince announced that he could begin to testify, the girl said that she had been delivering letters on behalf of Blanche's maid. Along with this, she also delivered boxes of jewelry and coins and other letters. Looking at Blanche, whose face was full of horror, Rihanna realized that she had not expected this at all. The heroine understood that even if they suspected that Palila would be caught red-handed, she could not imagine that they could catch Latry. At the same time, the maid also told that Blanche secretly asked to buy scented candles immediately after the head doctor's guilt was revealed. When the prince asked what the candles were made of, the girl immediately listed the ingredients. Rihanna reported that if these ingredients are mixed, the mixture can be used to prevent the effects of medications. It was because of these herbs that the Empress's pain did not subside, despite all the strong painkillers that were injected into her. Thus, Khmer Blush tried to convince everyone that Rihanna's medications and treatments were ineffective. The heroine reported that she found it very strange that the strongest painkiller had no effect on the patient. That is why she gathered all the maids from the Tishurit Palace and asked them which of them often carried out the orders of the head maid. Noting that she could not leave the Empress for long, the girl clarified with Blanche that this was precisely why she had to be in collusion with at least one maid. Rihanna noted that it was very careless to leave Latry Dale in the Imperial Palace because she thought that the head doctor was already dead. Blanche was horrified when the truth was revealed that she had been using Latry to manipulate the books and had even threatened to take her family hostage. Khmer Blanche jumped up from her seat and began to scream that this was a setup and that she was demanding a noble trial. She immediately fell silent when the prince ordered her to shut her mouth, saying that Her Majesty the Empress had already suffered enough because of her. He said she had lost her last chance to repent, so it was now considered appropriate to charge her. Looking at the confused Blanche, the Crown Prince announced that she was to spend the rest of her life in a Western quarry. The maid didn't know what to answer when the prince announced that the transfer would take place in a month and the count's family would not be able to escape responsibility. Rihanna, seeing that she immediately fell silent after mentioning the count, wondered if Blanche had given in or if there was another reason. Nevertheless, she was pleased that Blanche's question had been resolved without going to the noble court. Turning her dim gaze to Edward, she listened to fragments of his words about the interrogation being certified. Rihanna clutched her head, unable to understand what was wrong with her, because she couldn't hear anything at all. She realized she had overdone it, since she hadn't slept all night and hadn't taken her upper, but she hadn't expected to feel so bad. In a hazy state of consciousness, she only thought that she needed to take the Imperium as soon as possible. Seeing the girl fall, Edward rushed towards her with loud cries and grabbed her, thus preventing her from falling. Still in a hazy state of consciousness, she saw him trying to shout to her and ask her to call a doctor quickly. Opening her eyes, she found herself in her small body and immediately understood what kind of place this was. Suddenly, one of the servicemen called her and, noting that the weather was bad today, suggested that they go back. Realizing that she was sleeping, the girl asked with a smile to go a little further because she wanted to find the grass that only grows during heavy snowfall. She had a dream again when they stayed in the mountains for some time because of her mother's illness, and every morning she was busy collecting herbs with a servant. That day was different because while wandering through the snow, they saw the body of a small fry lying in the snow. When the servant asked what they should do, little Rana pointed out that if they went for the doctor, he might stop breathing before they arrived. Looking at the boy's face, she said that they needed to provide first aid while he was still alive. So, in the winter when she was 9, a boy she met in the mountains became her first patient. Looking back, she realized that her treatment was completely inadequate, but she put her whole heart into it. She still remembered very well that moment when the fading life was revived by her hands. Opening her eyes and seeing the ceiling in Garnet's palace, she realized that she had been transported to her bedroom. She understood that if she had slept a little longer, she would have seen her mother's face. Turning around, she saw Edward and a man next to him, talking about blood tests and such. They were in great surprise and immediately exclaimed when they saw that the Crown Princess had finally come to her senses. Edward immediately ran up to her and asked with concern if she was awake. Thinking that she was hearing voices, she looked at the boy and was immediately reminded of the boy she had treated. She couldn't understand whether she was dozing, because for some reason they seemed very similar to her. Noting that everything was fine, Rihanna asked where Zenith was if he was courting her. Edward told her that he had told her to rest because she looked terrible, watching over her without a break for sleep. Hearing that she had spent all this time with her, the girl asked whether she had been unconscious for a very long time. She was very surprised when the guy, noting that it was hard to believe, reported that she had been unconscious for 2.5 days. Remembering that she had heard something about a blood test, the girl was horrified when she realized that they could be studying her condition. She didn't know how much Edward knew, but judging by his face, he already thought she was sick. Rihanna herself knew that she was sick, but it was a disease that she could get rid of. She wasn't sure that taking the Imperium would cure her, but she got out of bed and told Edward that she was completely fine. She was quite surprised when the prince, noticing that she was speaking too calmly, asked her if she was interested or what the matter was. He exhaled heavily and reported that it seemed that Advisor Barmid had been right. After apologizing for the late greeting, the man who had been standing with Edward earlier revealed that he was Advisor Barmid. Judging by his name, Rihanna knew that he was from the Yalan Kingdom, and she could trust his medical skills. Edward said that a simple examination could not tell why she had fainted, so he called in Counselor Barmil and they ran a blood test. Turning to Rihanna, the guy said that Advisor Barmil said that she herself should know better about the state of her body. Not understanding what he was talking about, the girl asked what he meant and wanted to reiterate that she was completely fine. Without letting her finish, he clarified that she didn't need to tell her that and asked how far it had gone. Rihanna was extremely surprised when Edward pointed out how much she had lost her sensitivity.